We recently hit 2,000 subscribers, and I put out a community post saying that we would be doing a Q&A to celebrate, but that post did not reach too many people. So if you have a question that you want to be featured in the Q&A, drop that in the comment section of this video. I read every single comment, so I'll be sure to feature yours. So in this video, we're going to look at Coaster Express, the absolutely awful wooden coaster at Parque Warner Madrid. It's debatable whether it's the worst in the world, but it certainly looks like the worst wooden coaster to me. So this coaster's layout, if you even want to call it a layout, it starts with a turn out of the station and into the lift hill. And then it goes over this first drop, which is not even a drop. It's just like it goes through this big helix. Like, no. And then it goes through another massive double helix, and then a big turning hill that goes over the lift hill, and then a turn, and then a helix, and then another turn. This thing just looks like Son of Beast, but without the loop. It's just a bunch of massive turns, a bunch of massive helices. It looks absolutely awful. I've heard it's just ridiculously rough and uncomfortable. Anyway, who cares about the wooden coaster's layout? Let's get to the RMC. So, quick disclaimer, I measured the dimensions of every element on this ride to make sure the scale was as accurate as possible. So this is using pretty much the exact amount of space that Coaster Express's layout takes up, and it follows the ride structure exactly. So you're gonna pass through the transfer track before turning to the left and heading up the lift hill. No crazy RMC pre-lift stuff here. I wanted to use all of the lift hill structure possible so that I could get to the tallest height. The train will crest the lift and head down a drop that's similar to the drop on the Joker, just on a larger scale. There's not as much lateral force because it's more drawn out, but the laterals are still there, and so is the airtime. So this is where the layout differs from the original. Instead of passing through the entire double helix, it will go through the outer edge of the helix, which is actually the second time the train passes on the original ride. This element would be a massive outer banked hill, but it ends in a barrel roll down drop. It wouldn't feel like Iron Gwazi's, where in the back row you'll get absolutely yanked down the drop, but it'll feel more like the second half of Untamed's first inversion. Not that I know what that feels like because I haven't ridden it, but the shaping and roll speed are pretty similar, though this has more janky shaping, giving the ride a little bit more character. The next element is this super drawn out wave turn. Think of it like how Iron Gwazi's wave turn is a step up from Zadra's in terms of how long you're banked outwards, and then this is a step up from that as you're just going to be flying through this element before getting yanked back to the right. This element follows the same path as where Coaster Express went, except this goes under the lift instead of over, because instead of having a really not steep lift hill and a tall element passing over, this is a much steeper lift hill and a shorter element passing under. But instead of continuing along the route of the previous coaster, it crosses over and uses the track that enters the helix before taking the turnaround in the reverse direction as the original. So after snapping out of that wave turn, the train heads into a step up. There wasn't enough room to complete the step up and then turn left, so I had to turn left before the airtime was done, adding on a burst of laterals.
But Elite Coasters, why didn't you just make the elements smaller so that you can include the shaping that you wanted?
Well, I just like to have more airtime in the element, that's why. That was really cringy, let's not do that again. This element is also very similar to the first step down off the first turnaround on Hakuge Nagashima Spa Land, except it's taken in reverse. So this step up leads into this outer bank that is very similar to the first turnaround on Zadra, except to keep the strength of the airtime how I wanted, I added a significant change in the pitch as the train is dropping down, which is pretty noticeable in the POV. And if you can feel the airtime just by watching the POV, you know it's good. These next two elements are situated right next to the wave turn, and because the wave turn is scooted over just a tiny bit so it uses less of the support footers, this section can reuse some of the support footers from this section of the ride as well. This next element is a small speed hill, which to me feels very similar to this first speed hill on Outlaw Run right after the twisted hill, which is a great element, so this will be too. After this, you're gonna head into a massive zero-G stall. Now I've heard that on Zadra's stall, the width of the entrance and the exit are fantastic, so let's include some similar shaping on this. In fact, this is pretty much the same shaping as on Zadra's, just mirrored and on a smaller scale. The transition into the stall is a straight 180-degree flip to upside down, but the transition out flips in the opposite direction than it's turning, which gives some nice whip. The zero-G stall aligns the track back up with the original footprint, taking the place of the inside part of the helix. This next element is kind of inspired by that double sideways hill on Hakuge, even though both wave turns are kind of combined into one massive sustained airtime moment. Even the shaping on the exit is similar, where the airtime ends, but the track is still banked at almost 90 degrees, so it needs to bank out. The next element I was planning on being a small overbank like what you find in Steel Vengeance's second half, but this ended up having an airtime moment on the exit as a higher rate of change in the banking allowed it to level out and get back to a banking of 0 earlier than I anticipated, so I made a little dip in the pitch so that riders would get a nice pop of airtime exiting the element. This element puts the track under the lift structure, which is not a part of the original Coaster Express, so RMC would have to put in some extra supports under this. Also, this will give riders a nice head chopper while they're experiencing the unexpected airtime moment out of the overbanked turn. The next element is a speed hill similar to the one after the outer banked wave turn, and riders will get a bit of laterals in the exit. And by a bit, I mean a lot of laterals. This turns the train to the right and starts following a path parallel to the Zadra-like turnaround and the speed hill earlier in the ride. The track straightens out with a step up leading into a 0G winder. The banking on the exit is really weird because for some reason I wasn't paying attention to the lateral force when designing this in FVD, so when I exported the layout to No Limits 2, it pulled -2 lateral Gs, so I had to edit the roll points to minimize the lateral force. So this element turns the train back around and into a small bunny hill before a small overbank. This overbank aligns the track with this section shown here on the screen. This leads into an ejector pop leading into a wave turn, but this one is different from the wave turns earlier in the ride. This one doesn't give a more sustained airtime moment, but more of a quick sideways bump that really pops you out of your seat, similar to the one on Steel Vengeance. After this is the finale, which is just a bunch of ejector airtime hills that all deliver great sustained negative Gs. Each of the airtime hills on the entire ride deliver around -1 Gs, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but for what I prefer in a roller coaster, this would probably be a top 5 coaster in the world if the layout was used. It features an elite combination of inversions matched by few RMCs, and every single airtime moment on this ride is outstanding, something that cannot be said about the majority of coasters. I think that the standout moments on this ride would be even better than the standout elements on any RMC, but this ride also features a very long layout that adds on a lot more quality airtime. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on any more coaster content. I'll see you next time.
you.